Commander Marcus Chin had spent 11 years doing work that did not officially exist. He was a linguistic analyst for Earth's diplomatic corps, which meant he learned alien languages and listened to conversations that aliens thought humans could not understand. He was very good at his job, perhaps the best humanity had ever produced. His new assignment was supposed to be simple. The Valenthi trade station orbited a gas giant at the edge of known space, serving as a meeting point for dozens of species. Marcus was sent there as a cargo inspector. Check the boxes, stamp the forms, blend in with the other humans who worked menial jobs throughout the galaxy. It was meant to be a quiet posting before retirement. The Valanthi were the dominant species on the station. They were tall and graceful, with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. Their most striking feature was the bioluminescent markings that covered their bodies. These markings shifted colors based on their emotions, creating patterns of light that were almost hypnotic to watch. They considered themselves one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. They made sure everyone knew it. Their language was their greatest source of pride. Valanthi's speech combined spoken words with subtle pulses of light from their markings. The two elements worked together to create meaning. For 300 years, since humans first made contact with the galactic community, no human had ever demonstrated the ability to speak true Valanthi. The aliens believed it was simply impossible for the primitive human brain to process both elements at once. Marcus had cracked the language. In 18 months, he kept this secret carefully hidden. Every human on the station wore a standard translation implant that converted alien speech into basic meaning. It was clunky and imprecise, catching words but missing nuance. Marcus wore one too, but he never turned it on. He did not need it. The advantage of being underestimated was something humans had learned to appreciate. When people thought you could not understand them, they revealed their true nature. Marcus had built his entire career on this simple truth. He noticed the twin sisters on his third day at the station. It was hard not to notice them. Solara and Valessa Catheni were the daughters of Lord Catheni, one of the wealthiest trade magnates in Valenthi space. They were young by their species standards, perhaps equivalent to humans in their early 20s. Their silver skin was flawless, their bioluminescent markings particularly bright and elaborate. They moved through the station like they owned it, which in many ways they did. The twins had been assigned to assist with human trade negotiations. In practice, this meant they spent most of their time lounging in the observation deck, watching the various species pass through and making comments about them. Humans were their favorite target. Marcus was processing cargo manifests in the main bay when he heard them for the first time. They stood near the viewing window, speaking in rapid Valenthi, their markings dancing with amusement. "Look at this one, sister," Solara said, her lights flickering pink with laughter. "He walks like a ground crawler, all hunched and heavy. Do you think he knows how ridiculous he looks to everyone?" Valessa tilted her head, studying Marcus like he was an interesting insect. "Probably not. Their brains are too small for self-awareness. I read a study that said humans cannot even perceive colors properly. They see the universe through a fog. How sad for them. Though I suppose you cannot miss what you never had." They both laughed, a musical sound that rippled through their markings in waves of gold and pink. Marcus kept his eyes on his datapad. His expression remained completely neutral. Just another oblivious human doing his simple job. He logged the cargo weights, checked the seals, and gave no sign that he had understood every word. Over the next several days, he learned that the twins made a game of mocking humans. They had an endless supply of jokes and observations, each one crueler than the last. They talked about human smell, human intelligence, human mating habits, human food. Nothing was off limits. "I heard they only bathe once a day," Valessa announced one afternoon. Watching a group of human traders pass through the corridor, can you imagine? Living in your own filth like that? "At least animals have an excuse," Solara replied. "They do not know any better. Humans have technology. They simply choose to be disgusting." Marcus was organizing supply crates nearby. He focused on his work, keeping his breathing steady and his face blank. The twins glanced at him occasionally, checking to see if he had reacted. When he showed no sign of understanding, they grew bolder. This one is always here, Solara noted. Do you think he has a name? Or do humans just have numbers? They have names, but they are ugly sounds, all harsh and flat. Nothing like proper language. Should we give him a name? Something appropriate? Valesa's markings brightened with malicious delight. Let us call him Crawler. Because of how he walks. Psst. Hello, Crawler. She waved at Marcus with exaggerated friendliness. In broken galactic common, she called out, Human. You are working good. Very ... productive. Marcus looked up and nodded politely. Thank you, ma'am, he said in common, keeping his voice neutral. Just doing my job. The twins dissolved into giggles as he returned to his work. This became their routine. Every day, Marcus would work somewhere on the station, and the twins would find him. They would stand nearby and discuss him in Volanthi, saying things they would never dare say if they thought he could understand. And every day, Marcus would play his part, the simple human cargo inspector who understood nothing beyond basic commands, but he was learning far more than they realized. He learned that Solara was slightly older, born 3 minutes before her sister. He learned that Valesa was considered the beauty of the family, while Solara was supposed to be the clever one. He learned that their father had high expectations for both of them, and that neither felt confident they could meet those expectations. He also learned that beneath their cruelty, there was something else. Something almost like curiosity. Late one evening, when the observation deck was nearly empty, Marcus overheard a different kind of conversation. The twins sat by the great window, watching a human cargo ship depart into the darkness. Do you ever wonder what it is like? Solara asked quietly. Her markings had shifted to softer colors, blues and greens that suggested thoughtfulness. What do you mean? Being them, humans, they seem so. Content with their small lives? No dynasties to manage. No expectations to crush them? Valesa made a dismissive sound. They are content because they are not capable of wanting more. It is not admirable. It is a limitation. Maybe, but sometimes limitation sounds peaceful. Marcus filed that conversation away carefully. There was more to these sisters than casual cruelty. They were young, sheltered, and completely untested by the universe. They had never met anyone who challenged their assumptions. That was about to change. The weeks passed slowly on the station, each day blending into the next, in a rhythm of cargo and cruelty. The twins had made Marcus their personal entertainment, and they showed no signs of growing bored with the game. Their comments grew more creative as time went on. Valesa had a talent for finding new ways to describe human inadequacy. She compared them to various animals, each comparison more insulting than the last. Solara preferred psychological observations, wondering aloud what it must feel like to live with such a limited mind. Do you think they dream? Solara asked one morning, watching Marcus sort through shipping containers. Or is sleep just darkness for them? Empty nothing. I read that they dream about falling, Valesa replied. Over and over. Their brains cannot process more complex imagery. How terrifying. To be trapped in your own skull like that? Marcus continued his work without reaction. He had become very good at this. His face revealed nothing. His body language suggested complete ignorance. Only his mind was active, recording every word. Noting every shift in tone and color from their markings, the twins began testing him more directly. They would speak to him in broken common, giving him simple commands to see how he responded. Bring this here. Move that there. Clean this up. Marcus obeyed without complaint, playing the role of the cooperative but dim human worker. One afternoon, Valesa decided to push further. She was sitting in the observation lounge with her sister when Marcus entered to perform routine maintenance on the environmental controls. Without warning, she stood and deliberately knocked her drink off the table. The purple liquid splashed across the floor, spreading in a wide puddle that reached almost to Marcus's feet. Oh no, Valesa said in mock distress, her markings flickering with barely contained amusement. Then, in broken common, she addressed Marcus. Human, you are cleaning this? Mess is bad for station. Solara covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hide her smile. Yes. You clean. Very important job for you. Marcus looked at the spill, then at the twins, then back at the spill. Without a word, he set down his tools, retrieved cleaning supplies from a nearby cabinet, and knelt to wipe up the mess. His movements were careful and thorough. He left no trace of the liquid behind. The sisters watched him work with growing delight. In Valanthe, they continued their commentary. "He is actually doing it," Valessa marveled. "Like a trained service creature. I did not think he would. Should we give him a treat? Do humans respond to rewards? I think they respond to not being punished. That is enough motivation for simple minds." Marcus finished cleaning, disposed of the materials, and returned to his maintenance work as if nothing had happened. He did not look at the twins. He did not show anger or resentment. He simply continued with his task. This reaction, or lack of reaction, seemed to fascinate them. Over the following days, they invented new ways to test his patience. They would ask him questions in common, so broken it was almost incomprehensible, then mock his attempts to understand. They would stand in his way as he worked, forcing him to navigate around them. They would make loud comments about his appearance whenever he entered a room. "His hair is the strangest part," Solara observed one day. "Just dead threads growing from his skull. It is unsanitary, surely. Humans shed constantly. Hair, skin, all of it falling off them wherever they go. Walk-in contamination, yet we allow them on the station. Father says they are useful for simple labor, like keeping crawlers to clean the gardens. Necessary, but unpleasant." Through all of this, Marcus remained calm. He was learning things that went far beyond language. He was learning who these sisters really were. Valessa was the more aggressive twin, but also the more insecure. Her cruelty came from a deep need to prove herself superior. She had spent her whole life being compared to her sister, being told she was the beautiful one rather than the smart one. Every insult she threw at humans was really an attempt to reassure herself of her own worth. Solara was subtler, more dangerous. She was genuinely intelligent, capable of real insight when she bothered to use it. But she had grown up in a world that rewarded her for looking down on others. And she had never questioned whether that was right. Her cruelty was casual, almost thoughtless, which made it worse in some ways. But there were moments when Solara let her guard down. Late at night, when she thought no one important was listening, she would talk to her sister about things that mattered. Their father's business was struggling. Competition from other trading families had cut deeply into their profits. There were rumors that Lord Catheni might have to sell some of their holdings, a humiliation that would echo through generations. "If we fail," Solara said quietly one evening, "we have nothing. Our family name is all we are. We will not fail," Valessa insisted. "Father will find a solution. He always does. And if he does not, what are we without our status?" Valessa had no answer for that. Marcus stored these conversations carefully. They were revealing something important about Valanthe society and about these two young women in particular. They were not evil. They were simply products of their environment, swimming in privilege so deep they could not see the water. The Festival of Stellar Convergence approached. It was the most important Valanthe holiday of the cycle, celebrating the alignment of the station's orbit with the binary suns that warmed the nearby planets. A formal dinner would be held for all station personnel. Even the humans were invited, though they would be seated separately from the important guests. Marcus received his invitation without surprise. He would attend, of course. He would sit quietly at the workers' table and eat his meal and say nothing of significance. But he sensed that something was coming. The twins had been whispering together more than usual, their markings flashing with excitement whenever they looked his way. They were planning something. On the evening of the festival, Marcus dressed in his cleanest uniform and made his way to the Great Hall. The room had been decorated magnificently, with living light flowers blooming in floating gardens in crystalline, sculptures catching the glow of 1,000 bioluminescent lanterns. The high table was filled with Valanthe nobility, including Lord Catheni himself. The twins sat in positions of honor near their father, resplendent in formal attire that made their markings shine even brighter. Marcus was directed to a small table at the far end of the hall. With the servants and other low-ranking workers, he took his seat and waited for the meal to begin. He did not have to wait long for the twins to make their move. Valessa stood gracefully, her markings pulsing with anticipation. She spoke quietly to her sister, and Solara nodded with barely contained excitement. Then Valessa turned and walked toward the workers' table. Every eye in the hall following her, she stopped in front of Marcus and smiled down at him with false sweetness. "Human man," she said in her terrible, deliberately broken common, "you are doing us great honor. Very much honor. You are bringing the salt trock? For a table of important people? Big honor for you." She gestured toward the high table where her father and the other nobles sat watching. Marcus understood immediately what she was doing. Among the Volanthi, salt was used in purification rituals. Bringing it unbidden to a formal table was a grave insult, implying that the hosts were unclean and needed cleansing. If Marcus did what she asked, he would humiliate himself and the entire human delegation. He would be removed from the station in disgrace. The twins would have their greatest joke yet. Valessa's markings danced with triumph. She had him trapped. If he refused a direct request from a noble, he would be punished. If he obeyed, he would be punished worse. The room fell silent. Everyone was watching. Marcus looked up at Valessa, meeting her eyes directly for the first time since he had arrived on the station. Something in his expression made her smile falter. Just slightly then, Marcus Chen opened his mouth and spoke in flawless High Volanthi, the formal dialect reserved exclusively for nobility and sacred ceremonies. "I appreciate the invitation, honored one, but I believe the purification rites were already completed this morning. Unless, of course, you are suggesting that your father's ceremonial preparations were inadequate?" The silence that followed was absolute. Every bioluminescent marking in the room froze, mid-pulse. Valessa's face went pale, her silver skin turning. It's almost white with shock. Marcus waited calmly for the chaos to begin. The silence lasted for heartbeats. Marcus counted them. Then the great hall erupted into chaos. Elder Volanthi at the high table began shouting questions. Servants dropped their trays in shock. The other workers at Marcus's table scrambled backward as if he had suddenly transformed into something dangerous. In a way he had. Lord Cathani rose from his seat, his markings blazing deep crimson with fury. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Explain this immediately. Who is this human? How does he speak the true tongue?" Valessa stood frozen in front of Marcus, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Her sister had come to stand beside her, equally paralyzed. Their markings had gone completely dark, which Marcus knew was a sign of extreme distress among Volanthi. Marcus remained seated. He picked up his drink and took a calm sip before responding to Lord Cathani in the same flawless High Volanthi. "My name is Marcus Chen, my lord. I serve Earth's diplomatic corps as a linguistic analyst. I have been stationed on your facility for 8 weeks now, working as a cargo inspector." 8 weeks, Lord Cathani repeated. His eyes moved slowly to his daughters, then back to Marcus. "You have been here 8 weeks, speaking our language, understanding everything, yes, my lord. Everything my daughters have said, yes, my lord." The room had grown quiet again. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The twins had begun to tremble. Valessa looked like she might faint. Solara found her voice first, though it came out as barely a whisper. She spoke in Volanthi, forgetting to use the broken common she had always used with Marcus before. "How long? How long have you understood us?" Marcus turned to look at her. His expression was calm, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. "Since your first comment about my walking style, on my 3rd day here, I believe you compared me to a ground crawler. Your sister then suggested that my brain was too small for self-awareness." Solara's markings flickered with colors that had no name in any human language. Shame, horror, and something that might have been the beginning of understanding. "You understood everything," she said. "Every word. Every joke. Every cruel thing we said. Yes, and you said nothing. You just let us continue." "Yes. Why?" Marcus considered the question carefully before answering. The entire hall was listening, and he knew that what he said next would be remembered and repeated throughout Volanthi space. Because honored one, people reveal their true nature when they believe no one is watching, or when they believe the person watching cannot understand. I learned more about your society in 8 weeks of silence than I would have learned in 8 years of official diplomatic exchanges." Lord Cathani had been listening to this exchange with growing interest. His fury had not disappeared, but something else had joined it. Something that looked almost like respect. "A spy," he said. "Earth sent us a spy. An observer, my lord. The distinction is subtle but important. Spies steal secrets. I simply paid attention. And what have you observed?" This was the moment Marcus had been preparing for. He stood slowly, smoothing his simple worker's uniform as if it were formal diplomatic attire. "I have observed that your daughters are young and sheltered and have never faced consequences for their behavior. This is not entirely their fault. They are products of a system that taught them they were superior simply because of their birth. I have also observed that your trading company is in trouble. Competition from the Valesi Consortium has cut your profits by approximately 30% over the last 2 cycles. Your advisors have been lying to you about the severity of the situation." Lord Cathani's markings flickered. "How do you know this?" "Because your daughters discuss it when they think no one important is listening. They are worried about you, my lord, more than they would ever admit directly." The twins looked at each other in horror. Their private conversations, their fears and anxieties, all laid bare before the entire assembly. But Marcus was not finished. "I have also observed," he continued, "that 3 members of your senior staff are embezzling funds. The amounts are small individually, but together they have cost your company nearly 1 million credits over the last year. I can provide names and evidence if you are interested." The room buzzed with shock. Lord Cathani stared at Marcus, as if seeing him for the first time. "You would help us," he said slowly. "After what my daughters did to you, after weeks of humiliation, you would help us." "Yes, my lord." "Why?" Marcus had asked himself that question many times over the past weeks. The answer was complicated, rooted in history and strategy and something that might have been hope. Because humans learned long ago that the best way to change minds is not through revenge. It is through being useful. So useful that you cannot afford your prejudice anymore. He paused, looking at the twins. "And because your daughters are not bad people, they are young. They have never had anyone show them their own reflection. Tonight, they see themselves clearly for the first time. What they do with that knowledge matters more than what they have done." Solara made a small sound. It might have been a sob. Valessa had tears streaming down her silver cheeks, leaving trails that glowed faintly in the light. Lord Cathani was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he began to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling sound that rippled through his markings in waves of gold. "A human who speaks the true tongue," he said, "who has observed my household and my business and my daughters, all while we believed him incapable of thought. And instead of using this knowledge to destroy us, he offers to help." He shook his head slowly. "Your species is far more interesting than we believed, Marcus Chen. We work very hard to maintain that impression, my lord." The dinner ended early that night. The nobles dispersed in small groups, whispering furiously to each other about what they had witnessed. The implications were staggering. If one human could learn the Valanthi language, others might have as well. Every private conversation conducted in the presence of humans suddenly became suspect. The twins fled to their quarters immediately. Marcus did not try to stop them. They needed time to process what had happened. Lord Cathani requested a private meeting with Marcus in his personal office. They talked for 3 hours. Marcus shared everything he had observed about the trading company, including detailed notes on the embezzlement he had detected. He asked for nothing in return. "I do not understand you," Lord Cathani admitted at the end of their conversation. "You could have demanded compensation, political favors, recognition. Instead, you give freely." "With respect, my lord, that is exactly why I give freely. Humans have spent 300 years being underestimated. Every time we exceed expectations without asking for reward, we change a mind. Every changed mind brings us closer to true partnership with the galactic community. A long strategy. Humans are patient when we need to be. We have learned that some victories take generations." Lord Cathani studied him with new eyes. "You have given me much to think about, Marcus Chen, about your species and about my own. That is all I ask, my lord. Marcus returned to his quarters late that night. He felt tired, but satisfied. The revelation had gone better than he had hoped. Now came the harder part. Waiting to see what would grow from the seeds he had planted, Solara could not sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, watching the soft glow of her own markings reflect off the polished surface. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the human's face. Not angry, not triumphant, just calm, patient, like a teacher waiting for a student to understand a difficult lesson. Across the room, Valessa was crying softly into her pillow. She had been crying for hours. "You're ruined," Valessa whispered. "Father will never forgive us. The entire station knows what we did." "What we said?" Solara did not answer immediately. She was thinking about something the human had said. What they do with that knowledge matters more than what they have done. "Is that really what worries you?" she asked finally. "Our reputation? What else is there? Our name is everything. Mother always said that reputation is the only currency that truly matters among our people. Mother also said that humans were little better than animals, useful for labor, but incapable of real thought." Solara sat up, her markings shifting to troubled blues. She was wrong. We were all wrong. That does not change what we did. No, but it changes what we do next. Valessa lifted her head from the pillow. Her eyes were swollen, her markings dim and splotchy. "What do you mean?" Solara thought about the human cleaning up the drink she had spilled. At the time, she had seen submission, proof that humans were lesser beings who existed to serve. Now she recognized something else entirely: discipline, control, the kind that came from real strength, not inherited status. "He could have destroyed us," she said slowly. "He knew about Father's business troubles. He knew about the embezzlement. He could have sold that information to our competitors, or used it to blackmail us. Instead, he helped. To make us look worse, to prove how superior humans really are. Is that what you truly believe?" Valessa was silent for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, she shook her head. "No, I do not know what I believe anymore. Everything I thought I understood about humans was wrong. If I was wrong about that, what else have I been wrong about?" It was a question without an easy answer. Solara had been asking herself the same thing all night. She thought about the conversations she had overheard throughout her life. Adults discussing humans as if they were particularly clever pets. Teachers explaining that human intelligence was severely limited by their primitive biology. Political leaders describing humanity as a useful labor force that would never be capable of real contribution to galactic civilization. All of it built on the assumption that humans could not understand Valanthia language, that they were fundamentally incapable of truly joining the galactic community. One man had shattered that assumption in a single sentence. "I need to talk to him," Solara said suddenly. Valessa sat up fully, her markings flashing with alarm. "What? You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious. I need to understand. How did he learn our language? Why did he hide it? Why help us after everything we did? Father will never allow it. The scandal is already terrible. If you are seen seeking out the human who humiliated us, then I will go quietly." Early morning, before the main shifts begin. Solara's jaw was set with determination. "You do not have to come." "I could not face him even if I wanted to," Valessa admitted. "Every time I think about the things I said, the way I treated him like an animal," she shuddered. "I cannot even look in a mirror right now," Solara understood. She felt the same shame, the same horror at her own behavior. But beneath those feelings was something else: curiosity, a burning need to know more about this human who had turned her world upside down. She waited until the station's artificial dawn before making her way to the cargo bay. The corridors were mostly empty at this hour, populated only by automated cleaning units and the occasional early worker. Solara kept her hood raised, hiding her distinctive markings from anyone who might recognize her. She found Marcus exactly where she expected, working at his usual station, as if the previous night had never happened. He looked up when she entered, his expression revealing nothing. "I wondered if you would come," he said. He spoke in Valanthia, the informal dialect she and Valessa had used to mock him. It was startling to hear it from human lips, perfectly pronounced. With all the subtle light cues simulated through a small device attached to his collar, "I came to apologize," Solara said. She had rehearsed this moment in her head all night, but now that she was here, the words felt inadequate. Not because we were caught, because we were wrong. Marcus studied her for a long moment. His dark eyes were impossible to read. "Your sister is not with you. Valessa is not ready. She may never be ready. Our shame affects us differently. She wants to hide. I need to understand." "Understand what?" "Everything." Solara moved closer, her markings shifting through colors she could not control. Shame, uncertainty, and something that might have been hope. "How did you learn our language? Why did you hide your ability? Why help us after what we did?" Marcus set down his datapad and gave her his full attention. "Those are big questions. I have time," so he told her. He explained that he had started learning Valenthe 15 years ago. When he was still a young linguistic student on Earth, everyone told him it was impossible. The dual-channel communication, the light patterns, the cultural context that was supposedly hardwired into Valenthe brains from birth, no human could learn it. "But humans have a saying," Marcus said. "If someone tells you something is impossible, they are probably just describing their own limitations, not yours." He had studied recordings of Valenthe's speech for thousands of hours. He had developed devices to simulate the bioluminescent component. He had found Valenthe who were willing to teach him in secret, aliens who believed that knowledge should be shared rather than hoarded. "It took me 5 years to achieve basic fluency," he admitted. "Another to master the formal dialects. And I am still learning. Language is not something you ever truly complete." "Why keep it secret?" Solara asked. "If humans could speak Valenthe, why not announce it? Use it for diplomacy? Because we learned that being underestimated is valuable. Your people assumed we were primitive. You spoke freely around us, believing we could not understand. We learned things through listening that we never would have learned through official channels. You were observing us, studying us. Like subjects in an experiment, or like trying to understand neighbors, we wanted to live peacefully beside." Marcus's expression softened slightly. The galaxy is full of species who looked at humanity and saw only what they expected to see. Simple creatures. Useful for basic labor. Not worth taking seriously. We could have fought against that perception. Instead, we decided to work with it. And while everyone was busy underestimating you, you were learning, adapting, preparing. Solara felt a chill run through her body. It was such a human strategy, patient, pragmatic, built on turning weakness into strength. "That is terrifying," she said honestly. "Only if you are planning to be our enemy." Marcus held her gaze. "We would rather make friends." Friends. The word hung in the air between them. Solara had never considered that a human might offer friendship. Her entire life she had been taught that humans were tools to be used, not people to be known. "What you said at the dinner," she said slowly. "About what matters more. What we do next. I meant it. How do I fix this? How do I become someone who did not say those terrible things?" Marcus shook his head. "You cannot change what happened. You can only change what happens now. The question is not how to fix yourself. The question is what kind of person do you want to become?" Solara had never been asked that question before. Her whole life had been about what she was supposed to become. Heir to her father's company? Proper Valenthe nobility. Someone who looked down on lesser species, because that was what proper Valenthe nobility did. She did not know who she wanted to be. But for the first time in her life, she realized she had a choice. "Will you teach me?" she asked. "About humans? About what we have gotten wrong?" Marcus considered her request for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I will try. But you have to understand something first. Learning about others starts with being willing to question everything you think you know, including things that make you comfortable." "I understand." "No," Marcus said gently. "Not yet. but you will. 6 months had passed since the night that changed everything. The Valanthi trade station looked different now. Though the physical structure remained the same, it was the atmosphere that had transformed. The way people moved through the corridors, the way they looked at each other, the way they spoke. Lord Cathani's trading company had recovered. The embezzlers Marcus identified were quietly removed, their stolen funds recovered through legal channels. New security protocols were implemented. More importantly, Lord Cathani had begun hiring humans for positions. Beyond simple labor, analysts, advisors, people who could help him see blind spots. He had never known he had. The change was not universally welcomed. Many Valanthi resisted the idea that humans could be valuable partners rather than useful tools. Old prejudices ran deep, rooted in centuries of assumption and arrogance. But the seeds of doubt had been planted. Lord Cathani himself had become an unexpected advocate for human integration. He spoke publicly about his experience, about how his pride had almost cost him his company and his family. I was fortunate, he told a gathering of trade leaders. I was humbled by human capability before my prejudice destroyed everything I had built. Not everyone will be so lucky. The twins had taken different paths in the aftermath of that. Night Valessa returned to the Valanthi homeworld within a week of the incident. She could not face the station anymore, could not walk through corridors where everyone knew what she had done. Before she left, she sent a message to Marcus. It was brief and stiff, filled with formal language that created distance, even while attempting connection. I acknowledge that my behavior was unacceptable. I have much to learn about the universe and my place in it. Perhaps someday I will be ready to face those lessons. I am not ready yet. It was not quite an apology. But it was a start. Solara had chosen differently. She stayed on the station and threw herself into learning about humanity with the same intensity Marcus had applied to learning Valanthi. Language and culture. She attended human gatherings. She studied human history, reading accounts of their wars and triumphs and failures. She attempted to learn their languages, discovering to her embarrassment that humans did not have one language or 10 but thousands, each with its own history and structure. How many languages do your people speak? She asked Marcus one evening, reviewing a linguistic database in the station library, currently active. About 7,000, give or take? Solara stared at him. Her markings flickered through several colors that had no translation. 7,000. And you learned ours in 18 months? Yours only has 2 major dialects and a few regional variations, Marcus said. By human standards, it was actually quite straightforward. Humans are terrifying, Solara said. Not for the first time. We prefer the term adaptable. Their friendship had grown slowly but steadily over those 6 months. At first, Solara approached Marcus as a student seeking a teacher. She asked questions, and he answered them. She made mistakes, and he corrected them gently. But gradually, the relationship changed. They began having real conversations, the kind where neither party was trying to prove anything. Solara shared her fears about the future, about taking over her father's company someday, about whether she was capable of being a good leader. Marcus told her about his own struggles. The years of isolation while he learned Valanthi, the constant pressure of carrying secrets. Do you ever get tired? Solara asked one night. Of always watching? Always listening? Never being able to just exist? Sometimes, Marcus admitted. But every time I think about giving up, I remember why we started this. Humanity needs allies in the galaxy. Real allies. Not species who tolerate us because we are useful, but people who see us as equals. You think that is possible? True equality? I think it has to be. Otherwise, what are we working toward? The station began to change in small ways. Valanthi, who had never looked twice at human workers, started acknowledging them in corridors. New translation courses were offered, teaching Valanthi language to human students openly and without shame. A cultural exchange program was established, allowing members of both species to learn about each other's art and music and traditions. Not everyone approved. Some Valanthi complained that standards were falling, that humans were being elevated above their proper station. Some humans felt uncomfortable with the attention, preferring the old invisibility to this new scrutiny, but change had begun. Once begun, it could not be easily stopped. One evening, as the station's viewport filled with the light of the binary sun setting behind the nearby nebula, Solara found Marcus in his usual spot on the observation deck. He stood alone, watching the play of colors across the gas clouds. "I have been thinking," she said, settling beside him. Her markings were calm now, shifting through peaceful greens and blues. "About what you told me when we first talked. About humans making yourselves necessary, and I think it is more than that." She turned to face him. "You did not just make yourselves useful. You made yourselves teachers. Every time someone underestimates a human and learns better, they do not just change their opinion of your species. They change their opinion of assumptions in general. They learn to question what they think they know." Marcus smiled. It was the first genuine smile Solara had ever seen from him. Not polite or professional, but real. "That might be the most insightful thing any Volanthi has ever said to me. I learned it from a human who was patient enough to let me figure it out myself." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the light paint the nebula in colors that had no names in either of their languages. Two species, bridging a gap that neither had known existed until one person chose patience over pride. "What happens now?" Solara asked eventually. "You have finished your observation, period. Will you return to Earth?" "Eventually, but not yet. There is still work to do here. Still minds to change, including mine, especially yours. You are going to be a leader someday. The decisions you make will affect thousands of lives, human and Volanthi alike. The more you understand about the universe beyond your own experience, the better those decisions will be." Solara considered this. A year ago, the idea of taking advice from a human would have been laughable. Now it seemed like the most natural thing in the world. "Will you stay?" "Help me learn. As long as I am useful, you will always be useful." Marcus Chen. "That is what makes humans so terrifying." "Adaptable," he corrected gently. "We prefer adaptable." Somewhere out in the galaxy, other humans were doing the same thing Marcus had done. Quietly learning, patiently waiting, letting the universe underestimate them until it was too late to push them out. They worked as cargo inspectors and maintenance crews and cleaning staff. They watched and listened and remembered everything. Humanity was not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the most technologically advanced or the most numerous or the most ancient. They did not have the Volanthi's beauty or the Crescen's strength or the Mindary's telepathic gifts. But they paid attention. They adapted. They played long games that other species could not even comprehend. And slowly, one changed mind at a time, they were building something new. Not an empire. Not a dominion. Something better. A future where the question was not whether humans belonged among the stars, but how the stars would be. Different because humans were there, Solara watched the sunset with her unlikely friend and felt something. She had never expected to feel hope. The universe was bigger and stranger, and more wonderful than she had ever imagined. And for the first time in her life, she could not wait to explore it.